Okay, here are your notes for the day. If you notice, we went from skill 13 all the way to skill 18. We'll go back and fill in the gaps of some of the stuff that we skipped over, but we wanted to hit some of this stuff before your I-steps. It's important stuff. It's quadratics. You definitely have been exposed to quadratics in your Algebra 1 class. Next year in Algebra 2, you will hit quadratics hard. Quadratics are probably what you will do probably all first semester. So let's start with some definitions. Quadratic equation, an equation that contains a variable of the second power and higher exponents. So quadratic is the x squared. You are leaving just having x's and y's, which are called linear, and you're going to x squareds in your equations. A quadratic equation has two solutions. Now, that is not always true. That is the majority of the time. Generally speaking, quadratics have two solutions. It is also possible to have one solution or no solution. Those are those special cases, and we'll see those again. Okay? You've got some examples of quadratic equations. So x squared equals 16, 4x squared minus 81 equals 19, 2x squared plus 8x minus 24 equals 0. So you can see those x squares and all of those. That's what makes those quadratic. What is the difference between linear and quadratic? Linear, so 2x plus 3 equals y. You can see that's in the form slope-intercept form. We've talked about that a bunch. You have just x's and y's. Quadratic, x squared plus 2x plus 4. It contains the second power, so it has x squared. Okay. Quadratic equations can be solved by inspection. That's what we're going to do today. By square roots, which we're also going to do today. Factoring and zeros. Factoring and zeros we will do in the next lesson. So we split this one up into two lessons. Inspection and square roots, and then factoring and zeros will be later on. Okay, which is the best method to use? That is dependent on what the equation looks like when it starts. It's dependent on what the situation is. It depends on just how good you are at solving quadratics. So that is definitely a negotiable thing about what is your best method. To solve an equation by inspection, a quadratic equation by inspection means by solving it by relying on the help of memorized facts. So this is memorizing perfect squares, and you've got a table there that you can fill out. So 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25, 6 squared is 36, 7 squared is 49, 8 squared is 64, 9 squared is 81, 10 squared is 100. That's probably the bulk that I knew when I was in high school. As a teacher, I've learned a couple more. I'll say that I'm probably fluent through 15, probably not all the way up to 20. It's not going to hurt for you to memorize these. If you can't memorize them, you can just create this and on your paper, right? Just take your calculator, start creating a list, 1 squared, 2 squared, and then go from there. It's not something that we're going to quiz you on. It's just something we encourage you to have learned. Okay. So, by inspection. By inspection is a little bit misleading. It's just algebra going on. So if you have 2x squared is equal to 128, and you want to solve that, you want to get the x squared by itself. So you're going to divide by 2, which gets you 64. Here's where the inspection comes in. So to do the work, you can go back to your chart, right? Here's 64. What gets you 64? 8 times 8. So x is equal to 8, and x is equal to negative 8. So the plus or minus idea. You can write it as plus or minus. So instead of writing x equals 8 and x equals negative 8, you can write x equals plus or minus 8. That's also a possibility. If you want to write it in a more succinct manner, it means the same thing. Okay, find the solution to x squared equals 49 by inspection. You can look at that. What gets you 49? Well, 7 times 7. So your answers are x equals 7 and x equals negative 7. Story problem for you. Thaddeus learned that the square of positives or negative square roots of a number equals that number. He used this fact to help solve the quadratic equation 3x squared plus 4 equals 19 by inspection. What are Thaddeus's solutions to the equation? So for this one, you are going to subtract 4 to the other side. You're going to divide by 3, and you get an answer of 5. This is where that new challenge comes up. 5 isn't perfect. If you go back to your table, right, 5 is not the square of a number. It goes from 4 and then 9. So by inspection, you know that it doesn't work out evenly. It would be a decimal value. We don't want decimal values because we want exact solutions. So x equals the square root of 5 and x equals the negative square root of 5. Okay? So a little bit of a different approach. These other ones, right, 49, 64, those worked out perfectly because they were in your chart. If they don't, you're going to leave them as the square root. Okay, we'll deal more with square roots a little bit later on, but we did this at, I don't know, probably first quarter. We practiced solving and then simplifying square roots. For those of you in geometry, I know you guys have simplified square roots, and so that is my expectation that you will simplify square roots as well. So that's inspection. You have the chart, you know the chart, it's memorized, you use it. Okay. Now we're going to do the second version, which is very similar to it. Solving quadratics by finding square roots. Finding square roots means to solve it. You are solving the equation like you have solved linear equations a million times over again. Any quadratic equation that can be simplified to the form ax plus minus b squared equals c, where a, b, and c are constants, a is not equal to 0, c is positive, can be solved by finding square roots. That's a lot more words than you need to worry about. If a equals 1 and b equals 0, the quadratic equation simplifies to x squared minus equals c. Again, more words than you need to worry about. Here's the gist. You are going to solve it by getting whatever's squared by itself and then undoing the square. Well, what undoes a square? What's the inverse of a square? Just like if I would ask you what's the inverse of addition, you would say subtraction. What's the inverse of a square? You would take the square root, right? We saw square roots in this example back here, okay? That's the work that you're doing in this lesson. So here's your equation. 2x minus 3 squared is equal to 81. So you're checking, is there anything on the outside of the squared? And there isn't. So you don't have to worry about that. So how do you get rid of a square? You square root both sides. What's the square root of 81? Here's that plus or minus 9. You get two answers. Okay. There really should be another step in between here. How did you get to this 2x equals 12 and 2x equals negative 6? The idea is this. You're going to write 2x minus 3 equals 9 and 2x minus 3 equals negative 9. So you're going to split it up into two equations, one with a 9 and one with a negative 9. And then you're going to add 3 to 9 and get 12. Or you're going to add 3 to negative 9 and get negative 6. And then keep solving and get solutions of 6 and negative 3. Like any good equation, you are able to take those and plug them in and check your work. So for example, if we take that 6 and plug it in, 2 times 6 is 12. 12 minus 3 is 9, and 9 squared is 81. So that one works. Check a negative 3. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. Negative 6 minus 3 is negative 9. And again, negative 9 squared is also 81. So if you're ever not sure if you did it right, you can definitely take them, plug them back in, and make sure that they worked. Go to the next example. 4 times the quantity x plus 1, 5x plus 1 squared plus 12 is equal to 208. By using square roots, what are the solutions to the equation? So again, you are moving things that are on the outside of the square. So you're going to move the 12 first by subtracting. Then you need to move that 4. That 4 and then the parentheses are being multiplied. So to undo the multiplication, you're going to do the division. So you're going to divide by 4. You get the 196 divided by 4, which gets you the 49. Now that you have the square by itself, you can undo the square. Well, how do you undo a square? You take the square root. What's the square root of 49? Your answer would be 7. So you have two equations. You have 5x plus 1 equals 7, but you also have 5x plus 1 equals negative 7. So you go through and solve it and get your answers of negative 8/5 and 6/5. Okay. I recommend improper or mixed numbers. I don't really recommend decimals, but if you did decimals, that would be all right because they're not repeating or anything. Okay. Last one on here. You're going to move that 14 by adding. That would be your first step. You're going to divide by 9. Again, that's multiplication, so divide by 9. To get rid of the square, you're going to square root both sides. So 7x minus 2 is equal to plus or minus 6. And you get answers of x equals 8/7 and x equals negative 4/7. All right, guys, what I want you to do now is go ahead and find your whiteboards. You're going to try a couple of these on your own. All right, on your whiteboards, I want you to solve these two problems. X minus 2 quantity squared equals 49. X plus 3 quantity squared is equal to 25. Okay, go ahead and pause this video and give the students a chance to work on it and get solutions. Remember, students, that you guys should have 2 solutions. Okay, so for both of these, you should have square rooted, split it up 1 plus 1 minus, and then finish solving. The first one, your answer should have been negative 9 and positive 5. And for the second one, your solution should be negative 8 and positive 2. Negative 8 and positive 2. Okay, go ahead and erase your whiteboards. You've got 2 more to try for me. So these are your new problems. These are the ones that have a couple more steps in them. So again, go ahead and pause the video and have the students work on these 2, please. Okay, this one I've got the work worked out for you so you can see what's going on there. The first one, subtract the 2, divide by 4, split it up as plus or minus the square root of 9 or plus or minus 3, and you would get answers of negative 2 and positive 4. In the second one, you're going to add 11 and divide by 4. Take the square root of 4, so split it up. One equation is equal to plus 2, one equation is equal to negative 2, and then finish doing the work and get answers of negative 3 and negative 1. Okay, well, I hope those went well for you. I hope this is some work that you can do. You should spend the rest of the class period working on your IP. If you happen to finish your IP and you have technology, you can check it on the Haiku website. And hopefully I will see you guys again on Wednesday.